And the first animal I want to talk about today is gonna be the sugar glider. So let's go with Petaurus breviceps, aka the sugar glider. And already there, I guess, maybe a little explanation. Why do we have two names for the little guy, the cute little guy in the picture here? Well, that is because sugar glider, of course, is its common name, aka the one people use usually when talking about the animal. And that is also, it will be dependent on in what language you speak. So this one is its English name. But the one on top, like Petaurus breviceps, is its Latin name, also called, scientific name, binomial name, whatever you want to call it, really. There's a bunch of names for that. And it's it's very useful and very important to have, because the Latin name is used by scientists and, well, people like me talking about animals all around the world. It's like the same one. And so, the Latin name, so it's the same everywhere. Everyone uses the same. And so if I talk about Petaurus breviceps, you just know which exact species I'm talking about. Whereas if I say sugar glider, there are technically a bunch of species, or like different animals that look alike, but are not the same, but that also go by that same common name, sugar gliders. And so that's why it's important to have the Latin name. And also it's Latin because, well, Latin is a dead language or whatever. I mean, don't ask me. No one uses it, so it's free real estate. And we took it now. Yes. So, the sugar glider is a small arboreal gliding possum that belongs to the marsupial infraclass. Arboreal here means, of course, it mostly lives in the trees. Gliding possum, well, because it glides and stuff, it's in the name. And marsupial, as you likely already know, is like the same group where you will find stuff like the kangaroos and stuff. And so mostly animals from Australia. Its habitat is mostly rainforests, eucalypt forests, and woodlands. And you can find them to altitudes of 2,000 meters. You will only find sugar gliders in Australia, pretty much. There are some in New Guinea too. They are mostly found in Australia, as are pretty much all marsupials. Alright, next page, with more like very common information. And here on the top left, you have which groups it belongs to. Which again, maybe warrants a little explanation, as it's the first time we're seeing this. So if you don't know, all animals have been grouped into groups by scientists, and those are the big groups that we usually use when grouping animals, except the infraclass, but this one is specific to this little guy. But for example, we always start with the domain, which is like the less specific group, if you want. There's only 3 of those, and it's like Eukaryota, which contains pretty much everything you are familiar with, like plants, mushrooms, animals, and stuff. And so, as I'm always talking about animals, will always be in that domain. And if you want to know, the other 2 domains are like bacterias and archaeas, which are close to bacterias too. Then you have the kingdoms, which of course here will be the Animalia kingdom, containing all animals. Again, here it will always be Animalia, as we are talking about animals. It's in the name, And then it gets a bit more interesting when we get to like phylum and stuff. In this case, we are in the Chordata phylum, which is, again, a more specific group that contains all animals that have a chord, or not a chord, at least at some point in their development. But just so you know, that's like where you'll find most animals also you are familiar with, like the big ones. So like mammals, reptiles, fishes, that kind of stuff. And then we get to the class Mammalia, which I'm sure you are familiar with, because I'm expecting, it's not sure, but I'm guessing you are a mammal, like a human, so if you are in this class. And in this case too, I have put the infraclass, which is, I won't put the infraclass every time. When you see stuff like infra or super order, for example, or stuff like that, usually it's even more specific, and it's not used for every animal. It's just in this case, it's important because, as you likely, know that term, it's in the infraclass Marsupialia, aka it's a marsupial. So like kangaroos, opossums, wallabies, that kind of stuff. So like the mammals that have like a little pouch on their belly to keep like the babies and stuff. And like the other infraclass is like the placentals mammals, which contains, of course, you guys, right? Humans. And, well, all mammals with a placenta. Though even that is a bit complicated because technically marsupials have a placenta, but go complain to like whoever, decided on those terms. It was not me, okay? I'm just here reporting stuff. And then we get even more specific groupings like the order Diprotodontia, the family Petauridae, and the genus Petaurus. But those I won't, explain too much because it gets more and more specific, like what characterizes those groups. And it's a bit too specific. Just know, yeah, this little guy is in those groups in order. And then you, of course, have the species, which is not really a group, like it's just this guy. So it's breviceps in this case. And as you may have realized, its Latin name is, or like scientific name is a combination of like the genus. So you can say it's like its surname, Petaurus, and the species, like its name, breviceps. And the reason we combine those two is because the species name can be the same for different animals, because those don't have to be different. But at least the genus name, so the grouping just before that one has to be specific. And so that's why if you put those two together, then you are sure of which animal you're talking about. But don't use just the species name, or that could lead to confusion. And then some more, normal information, general stuff. Its conservational status is of least concern, so don't worry, it's not gonna disappear anytime soon, though there is an asterisk because we're not actually sure of like its full geographic distribution. And it could be a lot smaller than we think, in which case it could be a bit more in danger from like bushfires and stuff like that. But for now, it's still least concern, last I checked, so hopefully we're good. Then its age can go from 5 to 14 years, though I think I even saw like 17 years in captivity. So 5 years to like 9 years is more the usual in the wilds, and above that it's when kept in captivity. Its weight is 100 to 160 grams, so 3 to 6 ounces. Very small boy, right? And same with its height, 24 centimeters to 30 centimeters, 9 to 12 inches. Then we have here a little picture of one with how can you identify, I guess, a sugar glider, or like what are its characteristics. So to start with, I guess we can see it has some big old eyes, right? That makes him very cute. The reason it has those eyes is pretty much because it helps to see in the dark. Like it's a thing you're gonna see a lot with like nocturnal animals. Same a bit with the ears, like it has some cute ears that can swivel because it will help him pinpoint a bit better like sounds in the dark. And it's a thing you will see a lot in nocturnal animals too. Then we have what is called a patagia, which is simply the skin fold between like the legs that makes him glide and stuff. It's the same, I think, in like flying squirrels and stuff. It's also called a patagia. Then we have the marsupium, which is what characterizes animals in the Marsupialia infraclass. So all of them have that, so kangaroos too and stuff like that. And that's simply like the pouch. Now, again, it's like the technical term for the pouch in which the mom keep the babies in after their birth and stuff. Then it also has a prehensile tail, which helps him coil around like branches and stuff, for support. It has some counter-shaded fur, which is again a very usual thing to see in animals, really. And so what it means is like it has like darker coloring on its back and a lighter coloring on its front. And the idea is pretty much it helps him camouflage against like either the sky if you're looking from underneath, or against the ground if you're looking from the top. And yeah, to finish, we have chest gland. Multiple actually, but the easiest one to see is the one on its like neck. And there's like some more, I think there's one on his head, technically, just here. And two near its bum, to use the very technical term, yeah, its bum. And those are used to mark scents on like other individuals and stuff like that, but I'll talk about that a bit later. Now, what does a sugar glider eat? And what are its predators? I know it's sad to say, but of course, most animals get eaten by other animals. It is the cycle of life. It is how it is. But first, what does a sugar glider eat? Well, that's gonna depend on like the season. So in summer, like, yeah, summer, autumn, stuff like that, it's gonna eat actually a lot of insects and small invertebrates too. And then when we get to like winter and stuff, you know, insects are a bit more scarce and stuff. And so then it will start eating stuff like sap from trees, nectar, pollen too, though that can also be more summer, but it's mostly sap in winter. Hence the name, you know, sugar glider. It's because they can glide with their patagia and they like sugars, aka sap in this case. And so because also they like to eat pollen, they are actually a pollinator of a certain, you know, Banksia species, which is like a kind of flower you find in Australia. But that is interesting, you know, because when we talk about pollinators, we think maybe more about stuff like bees and stuff, you know, insects, but it can be bigger stuff. So in this case, sugar gliders are also pollinators. So yeah, I'll talk quickly about the predators. I know it's sad. But yeah, one of the big predators of sugar gliders are the Ninox owl, goannas too, you know, some sort of big lizard, and quoll, which are actually quite cute, I think, but yeah, they do be eating sugar gliders, less cute in that case. I won't go too much into detail, you know, I don't need to tell you how exactly they kill those cuties. That would be mean. I'm good. So let's actually go next with the fact that they are actually highly social animals. Sugar gliders indeed live in colonies of up to like 7 adults, and there's usually like 2 dominant males at the same time, which is a bit special. Usually there's only one. They also engage in social grooming, so you know, they like groom the fur of each other's, a bit like you'll see usually monkeys do, and they can mark their territory and members of the group with saliva and, you know, a certain scent that they create from like the sweat glands that we saw like just before. So that's like the main purpose of the sweat glands, is like to mark their territory. And also, I guess, fun fact, they are one of the very rare mammals that exhibits male parental care. Usually it's only like the mom who takes care of the kids, of course, but not in sugar gliders. With them, the dad is not a deadbeat. Who knew? It can happen, yes. And so they communicate with each other through vocalizations, visual signals, and of course, the scents and stuff, so complex chemical odors, which helps to mark territory, convey health of individuals, and mark rank. Other stuff about sugar gliders are that it's a popular exotic pet, even more so in America. I know they've become a bit more of a pet. In Asia too, it's quite common. And interestingly enough, you know, recent research even indicates that most pet sugar gliders in America are not even like the species they thought it was. And it's like actually a different one, the Crafts glider. Like they're very similar, but it is funny how, you know, people have been sold something and it's like, it's not the same one, technically, it's a different species. And also climate change equals bad, in case you did not know. But even more so for those little guys, because yeah, they are very sensitive to ecological disasters, mostly stuff like, you know, the Australian bushfires of like 2020, 2018, I think, were like big ones that destroyed a lot of their habitat. And that can be a problem as the geographic distribution may be a lot smaller than we thought, and so they may be even more impacted than previously thought. The origin. Okay, yeah, why not? I'll put the origin here. I won't always put it because it's a bit hard to find that information for a lot of animals. But at least for sugar gliders, we know they likely originated in the Miocene period in New Guinea, aka a long time ago, but not that long, you know, like if you look at the image, some stuff you should know is like the Jurassic period, right? Cretaceous, where we had dinosaurs and stuff. And so, yeah, they were actually a lot more recently they appeared. And so that was like pretty much like what, 23 million years ago, something like that. It's a long time ago, but not that much, technically, because as you can see, it goes back to like 2.5 billion years ago. Indeed. The scientific name translates to short-headed rope dancer in reference to the canopy acrobatics. You have sexual dimorphism is present in the species, so you know that means a difference in physiological characteristics between males and females, and it's even more pronounced at higher altitudes, with the males being bigger usually, as it is the case in a lot of animals. The eyes are set far apart to help with triangulation. Yeah, that's a bit more technical, but what that means is also one of the reasons they have like big eyes that are so far apart. Maybe I can go back, see, like that. You know, it's like a big space between their eyes. And so that's to help them gauge the distances and stuff, like between one tree to the next, to help them glide smoothly from one to the other. They have opposable toe on each hind foot, which is, I guess, pretty interesting because that's not a thing you see a lot, like only really monkeys, have that kind of stuff. Lets them like grab stuff. I guess opposable toes appear a lot in arboreal mammals and stuff. Then also the second and third digits, so in the feces, are fused in a grooming comb, which is like what they used for social grooming, comb the fur of each other. The fourth digit is elongated to extract insects from under tree bark. Also, it's a thing you see a lot with monkeys too, or like they use, branches and stuff to do it. Here, one of the toes is like long on purpose to do that. And then, spicy information. I hesitated to put that kind of stuff, but it is a thing that comes up when you study animals. But females have 2 uteri and males have a bifurcated penis. Yeah, they're weird like that, it's how it be. Some animals have some pretty weird genital stuff, and so they usually give birth to 1 or 2 babies, also called joeys, like with kangaroos and stuff. The gestation period is 15 to 17 days, which is not a lot at all, right? But that's pretty normal for marsupials. Even kangaroos don't have a big gestation period, and so the very, very small joey will crawl out pretty early on and go into the pouch, where it will stay for a long while. It's gonna be in the pouch for 110 days, which is a lot compared to the gestation period. But that's a bit how it works with marsupials. Of course, placental animals like us went like the other way, where the baby stays in the womb a lot longer, and so comes out more developed and stuff. And I guess fun fact, the females can glide even while pregnant. Indeed, I guess some people had to research that. And I think that's most information for the sugar gliders.